76.9% of women in our industry, and 16% and there are only 16% of them in leadership positions at the top. So it's dominated by men at the top. Definitely, there's a lot of decision makers who are men. Would I like to see more men in the industry? Is it a problem? I don't know.
Hello and welcome to the meeting room. I'm Paul Harvey.
And I'm Holly Patrick.
And today we're joined by Grace Louisy, the Director of Operations at Headbox, and Shonali Devereaux, the owner of Professionali and a Senior Lecturer at the University of Hertfordshire. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
So, Shonali, part of your job involves lecturing at colleges and universities on event management. What are young people telling you about the challenges they face breaking into the industry?
It's really interesting because a lot of people go through the process of university or college for which they have to pay and then come out the other end with an expectation that that is going to give them a leg up in the industry somehow. So the frustration is that with a lot of employment, they're still starting relatively low on the ladder. They're expecting to go straight into management roles because of the skills that we have been trying to teach them in terms of strategic management and understanding the wider industry. The truth really in our industry, in the events industry, is a lot of organizations still feel that many of the skills required to perform in their organizations need to be learned on the job. So they'll want to know that people have a degree, but then they'll still start them at the bottom of the rung. So that's one of the biggest frustrations that we face with uni students leaving degree pathways.
So people kind of going into jobs and thinking that they ought to be further on than they actually are.
Absolutely. And there's also a recruitment issue right now, I think. I think a lot of people have jobs on their books that they're recruiting for that are very skills-based, especially post-COVID. People are wanting a lot of digital skills because of the nature of virtual and hybrid events. And because we don't necessarily teach skills at university, we teach critical thinking, we teach about the wider industry, we teach about the context of events and tourism, that you'll be able to enter the industry at any point and pick up a job in logistics or in management. A lot of the skills like learning Slack or being able to understand how to, operate virtual events, being able to operate Cvent or any other kind of technical software, they're having to learn those on the job. And so it's a very different environment. It almost feels like they have to retrain when they start off. And a lot of them end up in lower hospitality jobs than they would have expected having gone through a degree program.
At university, when you're lecturing, is there a year where they go into the field and have experience? Or is this something that's mandated and compulsory, or is that just do your best to get an internship, do your best to get a foot in at the door at whatever event?
I really, really wish that it was mandated. It would make such a difference because those people that do go on placements and then come back for that final year are able to apply what they've learned in the industry and then bring it into their final year. And the difference in their output is incredible in terms of how they understand the concepts. They're all theoretical when you're 18, 19. When you've spent a year working in an organization, they stop being theoretical and you start understanding how tangible they are, or how it all kind of fits into place. But it really is, placements are up to the individuals. It's something, we have a placements team. They don't actively search for placements. The idea is that you look for them, and then when you've got one, there's a process that you have to go through. But students are really looking for these really at the end of their first year when they're just adults for the first time. They're starting to get used to, doing their washing up as well as getting into the rhythm of university. The idea of a placement sometimes is beyond them. And unfortunately, I don't think the ties between industry and education are strong enough at the moment. I would love to see them stronger. I'd love to see all students studying event management fighting over the plethora of placements we have in the uni, but it just doesn't happen that way. There are lots of routes in. I'm happy to talk about all of them, but that is one really good way in that industry and education, I think, could work better together.
Yeah, and we'll definitely come back to that. But Grace, I want to come to you now. Congratulations on your recent promotion to Director of Operations at Headbox. Well done. That's really cool. Tell us about your entry into the industry. Was it the university route? Did you go through college, or did you, like many of us in the room, fall into the industry?
So I totally fell into it. Before I joined the events industry, I was a youth worker. I used to run youth programs across London for national charities. So part of that role was about getting young people the skills, the confidence, the experience, preparing them for the world of work. So actually, it's a real passion project of mine to have as many different types of people from all backgrounds and all walks of life to enter this gorgeous industry that I absolutely love. So I feel like I've kind of come full circle now as a director of operations, where I'm now a hiring manager, and I can actually hire people that really have that raw talent, that desire to learn, that interest in the industry, which I think is so important.
What sort of themes then are you finding amongst these new hires, younger people in the industry specifically? I mean, we touched on the expectation that they either come out of university or they come into the industry through whatever route, and they have an expectation that they will be in maybe management roles or more senior roles that then they're brought into. Do you see that across your hires as well? And also, can we talk about, and maybe it's too soon to talk about money, but salary expectation? Yesterday on Instagram, I saw on Diversity Alliance, which is run by Gabby Austin Brown, someone had contacted her and said, I've been in the industry for 4 years. I've got 4 years of solid experience. This is what we're talking about, and I'm still earning £25,000. She said they haven't had a pay rise. Is this normal? I mean, we need to talk about that, right? Especially if you're living in London. Is that enough money? Should we be offering them higher salaries or progressive job roles?
I mean, firstly, I read that too. I love all the work that Gabby does. Brilliant newsletter. So Headbox is obviously a tech company. Even though we offer end-to-end event management, we're supported and supercharged by software. So for us, we really pride ourselves on being a living wage employer. For us, we're kind of competing against other tech companies and tech salaries, which are traditionally higher. So because I don't have that traditional agency experience, salary for me is something that's really important for anyone starting out, that they can afford to live. We know it's more and more expensive to live in the UK. And so working for a living wage employer is really important to me. I can't speak for other agencies, but certainly where I work, fair pay is really important. What I would say is there's definitely a disconnect between, as Shonali says, when people leave university or leave college or leave whatever experience they have and they enter the job market, their expectations are a lot higher than when I entered. And certainly that is tough as an employer. You want to attract talent, you want to retain talent, but potentially you may not be able to offer a higher salary. So I think as well, it's about striking that balance of what else can you offer them? Is it incredible learning and development? Is it a really clear progression path? Is it benefits and perks? Like, if you cannot offer the salary, what else can you bring to that person's life and that person's experience?
And it feels like something we're reacting to quite quickly. You know, macroeconomically, we're talking about, I think the cost of living increase was about 11% in 2022. It's 23% in 2023. We can't keep up as individual organisations with the cost of living crisis that's going up by more than 10% each year. It's a bit of a travesty that this person from Instagram was saying that their salary hasn't increased over the last 4 years, because that is actually in a real terms a decrease in terms of living costs. So that is a real shame. And that's something that we definitely need to be addressing as an industry. There should be a year-on-year increase as proportionate as we can get it to the cost of living, although I appreciate that's not really easy for people to do right now, because of course it eats into profit margins. But exactly as Grace said, people are looking to that wider benefit stream. You know, a lot of people are looking to flexible working, they're looking to mental health, all sorts of things that go around that salary that are really, really important culturally when you work in a high intensity environment like events management.
And I feel it kind of goes both ways. Of people that are entering the job market have higher expectations for salary and progression, but then also hiring managers also have high expectations where you're hiring for an entry-level role, but you're expecting people to have 4 years experience. So the salary needs to match the experience. So I think there needs to be a little bit of a give-get on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think we do enough to find people from all walks of life to come into the events industry? In terms of class, is there a class issue in the events industry at all, do you think?
I never thought about class when I first came into the industry. And then I feel like the events industry is a place where it's almost not classist in that anyone in any class could work in the industry. I just feel like it's an industry where you can be whoever you want to be in it, whether you're creative, whether you're logistics, whether you're about marketing, whether you're technical. There is a role for you. And in that sense, we ought to be appealing to a wide range of classes. But in terms of entry pathways, it's definitely a class issue, because one of the things I wanted to discuss that I really don't know a lot about, so I'm putting it on the table without being an expert on it, is that I feel the opportunities to open it up to working class individuals, people who might not be able to afford to get into the industry, is much, much harder. We do a widening access and participation scheme with our university, but those students can't volunteer at events because it costs money to volunteer.
Yeah.
They can't attend events to see what they're like. They can't get to them. It's really difficult for them to gain the visual and cultural experience that gets them enthused about being in our industry. And so in that sense, I feel like it's a class issue.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned it because I remember it's about 10 years ago now, but I went on a fam trip with someone who was an intern at an agency. And he was literally a member of the aristocracy.
Right.
It's like, I was like, what? I was like, is it only people kind of like from money who can afford to be interns and to kind of like have that route into the industry? And I also mentioned it because I don't know if you've heard about Elevate New Gen, which is a new, so that's been set up by Peter Kerwood and Evie Manuel. And I interviewed them earlier this week, and they're both from working class backgrounds, and they were talking about that. And I'd never really considered it before, that there was that there might be class issues. But yeah, no, like you were saying, I think there is. It's really something to think about.
Part of Gabby's brilliant work as well, Gabby and Robert Kenwood set up REACH, which stands for Race, Ethnicity and Cultural Heritage, to widen access to people of different nationalities and cultures into the events industry as well.
When I first entered the events industry, I would quite often be at an event where there was nobody that looked like me, nobody that talked like me. It's actually, if you think about it, if you go to a networking event, you might have a glass of fizz. And I was thinking, I've never drank champagne before, or Prosecco before, or I've never had a canapé before. Like, actually, there's a lot of socializing that happens that actually, if you're from a working class background, which my family, that's certainly our background, I hadn't had these experiences before. So it is totally new, and it's how comfortable you feel in that environment, going to a sit-down dinner and thinking, oh my God, which fork do I use? Or which glass do I use? It's all new. So I do think that we need to address it. It's something that I'm certainly very passionate about. I didn't even know the events industry existed when I was at school. I had no idea that was a path. And even now, when I go to events and roadshows and trade shows, I meet people. I'm like, I didn't realize that was a job. That's so cool. That's so amazing that you do this role. And so one thing I'm very proud of that I've done over the last few years is we work with East London Business Alliance. So we're based just down the road, and essentially it's a charity that is all about getting young people from lots of different backgrounds, from local schools, into work opportunities, internships, going and visiting local businesses to essentially broaden their horizons. So every quarter we have teenagers, we have like 30 teenagers arrive at Headbox HQ. We'll do LinkedIn workshops, CV workshops, career insight days. And it's just a chance for them. You never know, they may never have even heard of events or the industry or an event technology company, and they get to see firsthand what it looks like. I think just opening those doors and showing people that this is an industry that they can be a part of is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're saying about learning LinkedIn, I mean, it's finely tuned, isn't it? Anybody can post, but actually to get the reception that you do with your A Day in the Life videos, and you, Shonali, with your fantastic descriptive posts as well. You know, it's a real art form. It's a real art form to do that, and it takes a lot of dedication. Just going back to the entry points then into the industry, and Grace, you saying about you would go to an event and, oh my gosh, I'm being served champagne, I'm being served canapes, a 3-course dinner. Do you think events historically have been seen as this party industry, and you only really know about the events industry if, you know, your parents have got a friend that works in events and they can get you a foot in the door? Is that how it works, or historically how it's worked, and is that changing now?
Well, I mean, yeah, no, I've got a few viewpoints on that. I mean, because we were talking about falling into the industry, and I fell into the industry as well, and I think a lot of people describe it as that, and I don't think there's any other industry really where we think about that. And when you talk about routes into the industry, I did a really interesting thing earlier this year. So the power of events is really trying to get people out into schools to engage with school children and help them understand the industry more. And in practice, it turns out to be one of those very sweet things where you walk into a classroom and nobody really knows what the events industry is about. And you show them this amazing video and they kind of get it, but then they've all been given questions that they absolutely have to ask to tick little boxes to score whatever it is that they need to score. And you go away thinking, did I do something good there or didn't I? But one of the things that Power Events has derived is this kind of 5-point access into the industry framework. So they talk about the university route, they talk about the skills route, they talk about the internships and placements route, and then they talk about the apprenticeship routes, and they talk about direct employment. And those are really kind of the 5 ways that people think about getting into the industry. But going back to what you were saying about it being a party thing, the first 10 years of my career, when I said to somebody I worked in events, now keep in mind I'm talking the Olympics, Paralympics, Commonwealth Games, like mega events, people will go, oh, you organise parties and weddings. And I wanted to put it's a valid part of our industry, but I did want to put my head in my hands and go, no, it's so much bigger than that. It's so much more exciting. And I think people do only see the corner of the envelope. They might see the Olympics, but they don't think about the amount it took to organise the Olympics.
Yeah.
There's a lot of criticism about the Paris opening ceremony, and I have lots of opinions on that, and I think it's great. But when you think about, people see it, but they don't go, well, what would it have taken to do the logistics?
Yeah. Who's doing that?
Who's doing that? Who's thinking about it? It's that critical thinking angle. You go to Glastonbury, who's organising it? People don't think about what happens behind the scenes when they have an experience.
It's so interesting because over COVID I was talking to lots of people in government and MPs, and literally speaking to people in government, and they didn't really get the industry. And you say to MPs, like, when you have a conference every year, the party political conference, someone organises that. That's an industry.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's actually a running joke in my friendship group that I'm a party planner. Running joke, and I'm like, I'm actually not. I mean, I think it's one of those things. The challenge is when you do host events, actually you want guests to be experiencing the buzz and thinking this is the most brilliant event, and actually that's the feeling that they go away where they think it's so impressive and wow, and they think it's really fun. You don't actually want them to be thinking about behind the scenes. So when you're hosting brilliant events, you're giving them the experience that you want, but on the flip side then don't necessarily appreciate all the hard work that's been done to get that experience. So it kind of shows just how well you're doing your job.
Yeah, so that's so funny, Grace. You just made me remember that when I used to talk to people about what I did, I'd say if you've gone somewhere to an event and you haven't had to think about it and you've just enjoyed the experience from beginning to end, like you knew where the ticket was, you knew where the cloakroom was, you knew who you were going to meet, you knew what exhibitors you were going to see, blah, blah, blah. If you didn't think about it for 1 minute from beginning to end, then I have done my job perfectly. And actually, that's right. Maybe that we're doing our job so well that nobody knows about us. That's what it is. Yeah.
Just on that then, going back to career pains and early entry into the industry, that surely cannot be taught. That has to be something that you pick up on the way, how to smoothly run an event and think of every eventuality and have a plan A, B, and C. That can't be taught at university, can it?
I mean, in that at university, we make them do an event every year. So we have to teach them the background of all of the different things that you have to do. The process, it's a process of whether it's design, whether it's delivery, whether it's working with clients, whether it's the logistics, whether it's your budget, there is a process. And so we do teach them the process and then we make them practice the process every year. So micro event, mini event, major event in each of their 3 years. And so it is a skills-based, it is a practice-based thing, I think.
Are you throwing curveballs at them as the events go on, sort of simulated volcanic eruption or something like that?
Oh, no. As you know, every event has its own unexpected curveball that you have never anticipated for, and that's how you live and learn, really. And it's so funny to see how the students react in that scenario. And they learn a lot. They definitely learn a lot. So it is embedded into the degree. You can learn that. What you can't teach somebody is to choose a degree pathway or to choose a skills course where they know that that's what they're going to do because it's unseen. Yeah. And I think that's why when you talk about falling into the industry, it's because so I fell into the industry and I actually thought I was going to be an architect, which is kind of, it felt like a similar thing. You've got to design for something and then you have to make it a tangible building within a certain period of time. I thought I was going to be an architect, didn't enjoy architecture at university, and so then dropped out and started doing events. But my background prior to that was facilitating. My mum was a very society-oriented, community-oriented woman, and I was constantly behind her organising things, doing lists, making sure
Yeah.
things were set up in the table. So I just had it in my bones, and
Yeah.
that's how it happened for me.
I love
So-
the sound of your mum.
Yeah, she was a formidable force of nature, I tell you.
Coming back to what you were saying about the power of events there and kind of falling into events, and I've spoken to Rick Stainton, who's like the driving force, one of the founders behind the power of events, and he said that one of his aims is to stop people saying, "Oh, I just fell into the industry."
No.
Sorry, Rick.
Okay,
But no, I mean, like we all have, but like in the future, kind of, so people don't just fall into the industry in the future. So that's why he's got kind of going out into schools and getting people to kind of educating people about the industry. And obviously they're doing some great work there. I think the power of events, that's a really kind of like powerful thing that they're doing. But do you think that maybe like the other kind of industry bodies and associations could be doing more in that term, in terms of kind of getting young people aware of the industry?
So Rick's program is really well thought through, and I think if he was the conduit through which other agencies went to be able to support that school's program, because at the moment they're funneling it through them, they could do with an infinite amount of people, because there's so many schools who need to hear about it. And I think I love people working collaboratively, and I love having one person that is the right conduit to do that information, to do that transfer through. And I think perhaps doing it through the power of events, and Rick will love me for saying this, having hated me for saying I fell into the industry, is that he should be the person that does that. I think the other industry associations are doing a fantastic job in terms of trying to fill that skills gap. So if you look at organizations like MIA and their accreditation scheme, they run education programs. You look at Beam, they've got education programs. There's PCMA, they're all doing it. And there's actually two specific event schools in the marketplace, the Event School and the Event Academy, trying to support the gap that where people don't want to go to university and they might want to learn those skills. So I think industries are doing enough individually to support education around the service skills and around the logistical skills that we need to know. And I think to do more in schools, I'd just encourage everybody to get involved in that program that Rick's trying to run.
Grace, within Headbox, if you're hiring or you're speaking to the hiring manager, if someone's got these certifications, are they a better candidate? And Shonali, with the university and the students, the young people that you work with, if they're actively going out to get those accreditations and certifications, are they more employable? Can they already go into those more managerial roles? I mean, how does it work?
I think certainly for Headbox, we're looking for values. Do they have the right values that we associate with our business? Are they innovative? Are they curious? Do they have a desire to learn? Are they a kind person? Are they a problem solver? Do we start with why? Do we solve our customers' problems? So I think it's all about the values for us, and do they have the work ethic that we're looking for? I think to have the accreditation to show that you've gone out on your own and you've decided that I'm going to go and learn about this, I'm going to get this skill, I'm going to have this accreditation, I think that shows a desire to learn and that determination to succeed. So I think that marries up with the values. But if someone didn't have the accreditation, I wouldn't penalise them for it, because they may just not know about it. They may not know that it exists. And ultimately, for me, I think as an employer, it's my job to make sure that when they arrive, we are giving them the best training, the best support, the best learning and development to make them better at their job. And as far as I'm concerned, if they're willing to learn, then we're willing to teach them.
It's really lovely to hear that, because I was going to say, like, sort of as an overview, I think that there's a lot of provision before you get into the industry. I think there's 160 different type of providers that do BTECs and university courses and all sorts of skills-based courses to get into the industry. And then I feel there's a bit of a progression gap once people get into organizations, because it is deadline driven work. People will be working on multiple projects at a time, and that upskilling in the job is quite difficult. I haven't found it in a lot of organizations. It's not a criticism. I'm just saying it's just the way that we've built our structures in our industry. And so I think that progression and upskilling we could do better work in that regard, definitely. But I mean, I'm sure, exactly as Grace says, it might be that people don't know about where to get that wider skills and experience. We're always encouraging students to volunteer. We do a professionalism course where we get them to set up their LinkedIn profile. We ask them then, because through university we have LinkedIn course access for the students. So we'll ask them as one of the modules to do a course in time management or do a course in professional skills that will then go on their CV, but trying to get them to go over and above to be able to be more employable, I think really, really helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you earlier on in the conversation, Grace, you spoke about benefits. And I think that nurturing part, the upskilling part, is a huge benefit from an employer, in itself. It might not be summer hours on a Friday, or it might not be here's a John Lewis gift voucher if any companies do that, I don't know. But that in itself is a real benefit for working in the events industry, that nurture.
I agree. I think because when I first came into the events industry, it was in a sales capacity. And in sales, it's totally normal to have no experience and to get rigorous training, coaching all the time, clear KPIs and things to work towards, and having a really clear 8-week, 10-week training plan. So I think because I started in sales, I honestly thought that every role got that. Every role had all this training and knowing, okay, what's my next step and what are these other skills? So that's something I've always taken with me to whatever discipline I now look after. So I'm very fortunate that I look after lots of different departments, one of which I was saying to Shonali over coffee is our event management team, which is a totally new discipline for me. But I'm still applying the same practices of, yes, you're brilliant at your job. You know how to run a fantastic event. But what about presentation? What about problem solving? What about pitching? What about client account growth? All of these other skills that, yes, it's not part of your day job, but wouldn't it be brilliant to have all of those skills? So I think it's a mentality dependent on the discipline. It's really interesting that that's not necessarily the case for a lot of event management, but I do think that you have to see it as a benefit and as a perk to be constantly learning.
It's so interesting because I think it happens in hospitality a lot. I think it happens in hotels a lot. They have those very structured progression routes. And I know when I did the AV conference, I did a youth panel to ask about what was missing. And they all said progression. They all said no clear progression routes through the industry, which I found really interesting.
I do think as well, when there's a new theme or a new industry-wide challenge, for example, sustainability, we know that we need to reduce our carbon footprint for events. Most people in the industry had no idea how to do that. So everyone is making a conscious effort to do sustainability courses, go to talks, learn lots of different things about sustainability. So I feel like when we know it's a big challenge that nobody has any experience of, we all actively participate. So I think we can do it and we want to do it. It's probably just in the day-to-day that people don't think they have the time to focus on it, but they should.
You've just made me think about urgency, because Grace and I obviously met through the Fast Forward 15 programme as from by Face Sharp. And there is that sense of urgency when everyone creates their goals, isn't there? And so there's a huge amount of upskilling that happens in that year of mentorship as well, where suddenly when you think there's nothing available to you in the industry, you find that there's loads available to you in the industry because you've set a goal to do it there and then. But and for me, the reflection on that is that it's often down to the individual and not necessarily built into the organisations.
You mentioned Fast Forward 15, and obviously that's set up to try and get more women into leadership roles in the industry. And I'm kind of interested in the gender split in events because it is kind of similar to there are other kind of sectors like primary school teaching and nursing, for example, which are overwhelmingly female. Is that a historical thing? And should we be doing anything about the fact that it's kind of mainly women in the industry?
I love that it's mainly women. I think it's a fabulous industry. I love it. I love the girlies. The biggest challenge I find is that it's majority women, but the decision makers are mainly men. And that for me is the biggest challenge.
I think the IBTM report 2022 said, correct me if I'm wrong, 76.9% of women in our industry, and 16% of, and there are only 16% of them in leadership positions at the top. So it's dominated by men at the top. Definitely, there's a lot of decision makers who are men. Would I like to see more men in the industry? Is it a problem? I don't know. So obviously the history of the business meetings and events industry is that growth out of the PA industry, which is why the PA show is still very connected to Convex. And is it a mentality that women are organisers and service oriented? And even in my own relationship, I'm definitely the organizer. Like it's is it gendered? I would like to think it wasn't. What would make it attractive to men?
That's a good question.
Well, and on that, what makes it attractive? We've spoken about those leadership positions, but what is making this industry still appeal as a sexy industry to younger people who want to have experiences, to travel, to earn a good salary as well? Is the events industry capable of that?
Of being sexy?
Being sexy.
It's so sexy.
Look at us.
Yeah, we're all really sexy. No, so I think when you use the adjective sexy, I think people are thinking of the Glastonburys and the really, really kind of showman media oriented events. And there are events out there that are really unsexy, but really satisfying to work on and incredible. I was saying to Grace earlier when we were talking about where we all started, like I was organising events in Hong Kong before I came to the UK, but when I came to the UK, the very first event I worked on was the British Crop Protection Council annual conference, which one year is called Weeds and the next year is called Pests and Diseases. And it doesn't get less sexy than that. However, it is still 3,000 people who would come together annually to talk about what they needed to talk about. And it's always sexy seeing the outcome of people having great experiences based on something that you have put together. The attractiveness, the hook, I guess, are those big media-worthy events, and then the rest of it is just getting people excited about knowing what skills that it is a place for them, that they can be their best person within the industry. They can use their skills wherever they want to within organizations.
Yeah, and I think the diversity in roles within the industry, there's so many different jobs that you can do that contribute to an event that can appeal to your passions. And I think back to the gender split. So obviously I did say I love the girlies, and I do. But I do think that innovation and progress always comes when there's a real mix of people.
Yes,
absolutely.
So anything that we can do to make the industry more diverse in every single way, I think the better. Everyone will enjoy it more. You'll push each other more. Ideas and creativity, that's all comes from having lots of different types of people together.
Yep.
And I think that makes it a much more attractive industry.
And also having an innovation mindset where, like, if you get lots of diverse people in the room, it's about having the kind of environment in which they can all freely express their ideas. There is not a single thing I have ever done that I haven't kind of envisaged it in one way, but when I've got a team of people together, the outcome has been completely different and infinitely better than I could have envisaged it on my own. So yeah, I completely agree with that.
Well, that sounds like a fantastic plan for how to improve the industry. But I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. So thank you for joining us today, Grace and Shonali. And we'll see you, and I'll see you again soon for another episode of the Meeting Room.
I'll see you again very soon, and I hope to see both of you very
Thank you
soon
so
as well.
much for having us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool.